What's up, Gears heads? Ninja Tips checking in, and thanks for joining me on the 6th edition of Gnasher Tips series. I got some more tips to talk about when using the Gnasher on Gears of War 4, and they fall under these categories right here. They're all insightful subjects to focus on in order to improve one's Gnasher engagements, with the first being the fight or flight scenario that happens during every engagement. Just like in real life, the game forces us to make tactical choices within milliseconds. Take on the big guy or run, and since victorious outcomes with the Gnasher depend on one's tactical movements, identification of objects around you and your opponent that can be used for tactical cover or retreats should be noted, along with the actual opponent's exact movements, focusing on body language using one's peripheral vision while still scanning the rest of the whole screen, because the last thing a player wants to have is tunnel vision, channeling their vision on a specific item or target and forgetting the rest of the hazards or windows of opportunities around oneself. 10 times out of 10, if I see just one guy to face, it's like a sure 1v. I take on the fight and to that individual by roadie running in that target's direction, because the shortest point from A to B is a straight line. Stop prematurely, according to my own prediction of where he thought I was going to stop running, and then take the first shot in order to deliver the choice to that neighbor, that fight or flight response option, to that individual who hasn't shot at me yet, or hell, even noticed me. So it's a way of getting the upper hand, because that individual will suddenly receive blood on their screen, which forces them to have a fight or flight reaction that already pushes them to react a little towards the latter and actually go for the back roll or side parry. The flight response is usually what one expects when having a power weapon, moreover. So paying attention to the weapon loadout is a big indicator of what kind of threat is there in order to come up with a clever way to avoid it. Smoke grenades and backward dashes along toward the pillars and box-like objects are the way to do it, since Lancer Fire will still be able to brush through the surface of objects and hurt me if one chooses the side row. Not firing at all, however, shows passiveness and unwillingness to fight back, so the chances of being rushed by multiple targets is imminent. One downside while in crouch cover, however, is that when one thinks they are hidden, reloading will actually bring up the Gnasher high enough in the air to let the enemy identify you. And if I fire back from the crouch, even if it's in the blind fire crouch position, my arm and head expose themselves for an instant kill shot from a special weapon. So at that point, it's all bluff maneuvers, timing one's shots, and confiding in Gnasher counters. The overall strategy is to be one step ahead of the game. So if I personally do go for the fight response, I start predicting my opponent's move and act before his own thoughts flourish, or go for the flight response as soon as I spot an enemy Lancer supporter so I can break the odds against me. But in reality, you're just making it look like you're retreating, which falls under the next category, Bluff Tactics. Now, a good way to think of this fight or flight and bluff tactics system is to recall the ghost from Mario Bros named Boo. He's a shy kind of ghost who doesn't attack you when you're looking straight at him, but chooses to do so when you're not. Now, the same concept applies to Gears, where your enemy prefers an easy route to victory over a more upfront difficult one. So to fully take advantage of this Mario Boo theory, you want to make your opponent believe that you're retreating to raise their vulnerability, yet control your camera angles to be fully able to direct that side picture and side alignment cursor directly over your opponent. Well, one good strategy is a side dash fake out, which is one way to bluff your enemy into thinking he has a guaranteed free shot, but has no clue that your horizontal camera is locked onto his direction, and that's where the right analog stick comes into play. I always try to place my invisible bubble in the center screen as closest to the general area of my target. This way, very small corrections are to be made, and I will most likely counter most of their incoming fire. Now, Gnasher countering is a battle of chicken, but it also comes down to whether they support your enemy and interfere with your battle that's ongoing due to counters. This is why it is crucial to fire with a support weapon first, such as a Lancer, to diminish the chances of a counter from working in your enemy's favor. Bluff Tactics is all about fooling your enemy, forcing him to fire his or her Gnasher and miss or do minimal damage in order to close in on them and insta-kill them, or if you're blind firing in an uppercut or side cut fashion. I call them uppercuts and side cuts because if you take a look at the way I control my character's movements, combined with the camera angle corrections, it makes it look like I take a swipe from the bottom to the top or the side to side after shooting with the Gnasher. Think of it as your brain and visual output from your screen not being able to synchronize with one another and having to click 1 second ahead of yourself. What helps me is not to focus on what's happening on the screen so much and focus on my hand coordination without having to look at my hands, obviously. So I recognize that I am making the inputs on my controller, but also recognize that there is an input lag, the space between the fight or flight response that my brain goes for, and the reaction speed of my fingers. Then there's the refresh rate of one's monitor and the connection speed that may handicap one even further during that short little gap of lag. And finally, the headset is a huge way to handicap oneself if it's not 7.1 surround sound. 5.1 will give you less opportunities to hear incoming danger, and a pair of headphones plugged into your controller is the absolute worst way to play Gears of War, since the audio lag will be involved and it will make it harder for you to avoid any shots, since the lag is actually bluffing you at that point. All the bluffing needs to be focused on is on the movement of one's own character, but not so much pay attention to the character itself. I usually like to keep my eyes on the surrounding of my character, off into the distance somewhere. I scan my eyes from left to right naturally, and I look for any type of movement so I can pinpoint and count up to 5 total enemies and play accordingly, strategically, like a game of chess, where every character's position is the key to dominant control over an area, and it's always the highest elevation points that take the cake. So sometimes I made the mistake of focusing directly at my own character, but I found it was a bad habit to create, and it was better for me to look towards the distance for any kind of movements and to envision or see in my mind's eye the sweet spot about an inch to the right of my character, specifically the neck and shoulder area, as I look into my screen in order to guide my shots. And if I happen to slap on the first shot, it's always better for me to backward run and then shoot than to run, side dash, run, since my target's Gnasher shot spread remains the same when I'm at a close proximity to them and changes when I am at a safer distance, therefore allowing me to take less damage altogether and still be able to fire back safely as well. Their shot spread becomes more ineffective the more distance I become with my targets using the Gnasher. I try to avoid giving them my back completely, because I know unless they're far away from me, I can only answer. It forces the enemy team to fight or flight when their shots are becoming ineffective and they have blood on their screen, becoming vulnerable to the single shot or the double shot down, depending on whether they choose to fire back at least once for a counter shot. Counter shots make the difference in the world. Active reloading mid-battle, therefore, will give you the upper hand on the counter shot. And it must be done so at the right time, though, because it gives off a noise. As I mentioned before, it's obvious when a character throws his or a shotgun in the air as part of the reloading process. It gives your enemies the awareness that you're active reloading and that they may do so as well, or wait for their backup to arrive. I always want to be able to avoid counter shot battles and take the fastest possible route to killing all the opposing targets in order to decrease the amount of possible chances that the player would go assist his friend and take one of our guys out. Long counter Gnasher battles always invite the enemy players to jump in and answer. This is why some people camp behind objects and pray for them to come unexpectedly. You know, they camp, but I by no means admonish that type of play style in Gears. Just go for actives, guys. Honestly, active reloading mid-battle is pretty much like giving yourself a stronger Kamehameha when a Gnasher rounds impact one another mid-air. The active ones will counter the ones being shot at you and also do a surplus amount of damage on top of that. Random tip here now, if you want to get a gaming monitor, make sure it's a TN panel monitor and not an IPS. Alright, that's just going to extend the input lag on you as a player who wants to be faster on the other guy or girl. You know, we already have to be playing like a second ahead of ourselves, guessing where our enemy is going to make his next move, and knowing just how to counter that. It's a chess game, I'm telling you. It's a video game of chess with guns and lovely bloody dynamics. Now, if you're playing in a squad, the sharing of information to teammates so they can actually aid you, that's a pretty vital, crucial tactic there. If you're playing in a squad, of course. It's no surprise that Gears of War 5 got announced, but the mechanics, they might not exactly be the same, as it always changes every Gears of War game slightly. However, the concept of having the proper mindset, focusing on visual and audio cues, and actually being there to help your team out is the key to success. Alright, last little trick I'm going to show you for now. Makes for a good toasty kill. Simply go for the forward jump, and while you're mid-air, hold down the roadie run button, mine is default A, for just a tiny fraction of time along with the left thumbstick back, and adjust for your camera angle with the right stick. If you hold the A for longer, you end up doing a complete 180 turnaround, which is cool if that's what you want to do. Shorter hold time and adjust for camera angle for that toasty time. If you want to just do the 180, the camera angle adjustment doesn't really matter. Well guys, that's all for now, but of course there's always more tips to go. Gears of War 5 almost out, baby! Woo! Let's get it, let's get it! Alright guys, catch you later.